Welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to now welcome up Rotarian Eric Erickson, who will facilitate today's invocation.
Thank you, President Jason. I just spent a great few days in Brookings during the volleyball championships, and it got me thinking the correlation between, is it just sports, or is there more to high school activities than just the competition? So this invocation is about the relationship between the four-way test from Rotary and high school activities. So if you'll bow with me and consider this. Lord, we ask you to be present in this meeting today. Thank you for the gifts that you've bestowed upon our leaders here that are going to share with us. And as we consider the correlation between Rotary and high school activities, we look at the four-way test. First of all, is it the truth? We thank you, Lord, for coaches who teach lessons of life through sports and all activities, things like perseverance, respect, acceptance of the truth, identifying gifts in all of their players. Is it fair to all concerned? We consider the officials, referees, line judges, everyone involved in making the play fair and to set a clear standard that we all play by, leaving no question about the merit of our achievements. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? We're grateful that you've created in us a competitive spirit without destroying friendships. We can play competitively, demonstrating that friends can have different uniforms, be from different communities, and approach the game of life differently, all while still remaining friends. Is it beneficial to all concerned? We thank you, Lord, for the athletes, the musicians, the actors, the artists, all of their families, everyone involved in activities for demonstrating your immeasurable goodness by supporting one another and glorifying you in the process. We thank you and pray. Amen.
Thank you, Eric. Please be seated. Instead of asking guests to stand today, I am going to speak not only to the guests that are here, but also to the guests that are with us digitally. As you all know, we a few years ago took efforts to broadcast our programs on Facebook Live, and now it is on YouTube. Each week, live, we have hundreds of people watching our programs, and over the course of the week, thousands of people tune into what we provide here at Downtown Rotary. So to all of them and to all of you, welcome, and thank you for joining us. And it became very relevant knowing that we are obviously in a pandemic, and to be able to bring forth to those that are, to all of our Rotarians and to all of our guests, both in person and digitally, it's all that much more relevant. So with that, I will like to turn it over to Rotarian Tony Knorr, who will facilitate and moderate today's conversation. Thank you.
No, that's all right.
I'll read the bios. Dan Swartos is in his fourth year as Executive Director of South Dakota High School Activities Association, based out of Pierce, South Dakota. As Executive Director, Dan is responsible for all administrative functions of the South Dakota High School Athletic Association and its 181 member schools, which cover over 40,000 student athletes and fine arts participants in South Dakota. Important aspects of the job include coordinating and working with the 9-member board of directors on policy issues, making determinations, and completing investigations regarding eligibility, financial matters, and legislative outreach. Dan will serve on the National Federation of State High School Athletic Associations Board of Directors starting next year, and will be the second executive director from South Dakota to do so in the 115-year history. Prior to the South Dakota High School Athletic Association, Dan was a special education teacher and coach in the Brookings School District for 3 years, and a school superintendent in the Big Stone City and McCook Central School Districts for 9 years. Dan grew up and graduated from Sioux Valley High School in Volga, South Dakota, received his bachelor's degree from Dakota State University, master's degree from South Dakota State University, and a doctorate from the University of South Dakota. Dan has been a member of the South Dakota Army National Guard for nearly 21 years and served in the Iraq War from February of 2003 through July of 2004. Dan and his wife Maria live in Pierre with their 3 children and are foster parents for children in the Pierre area. Maria is a kindergarten teacher in the Pierre School District. Please join me in welcoming Dan. In addition to Dan, we have Casey Meile is currently in his 3rd year as the coordinator of athletics and physical education in the Sioux Falls School District. Casey's background includes 12 years of service as a coach, teacher, and mentor at the NCAA Division II level, as well as 1 year experience as Dean of Students at University of Sioux Falls and 7 years of administering and supervising interscholastic activities. Casey is an active member of the South Dakota State Interscholastic Athletics Administrators Association and the National Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association. Casey and his wife, Laura, have 3 children, Ella, who is 14, Peyton, 12, and Faye, 8. And now, Tony, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Jason, and once again, welcome Rotarians, your guests, those that are viewing online. We're grateful that you're here today, and we're really grateful that that Dan made his way from Pierre, and Casey is joining us. A couple young leaders who are in a place now where no one would have predicted a year ago. We're going to talk about some of those challenges. We're going to talk about some of the opportunities that they see. First, before we do that, Jason did a nice job with the bios, but do want to have an opportunity for these our 2 guests to just level set with what their job is, what their responsibilities are in a year where there is no pandemic, just their general responsibilities, the role that they play at the state level, at the state's largest school district level, and we're going to start there. With the conversations, we'll have an opportunity for some questions and answers. So if we have Rotarians that are viewing online and you want to submit questions, or those that are here in person, we'll have time for that. But we're going to jump right in. Some questions will be directed at both. Some will be directed more specifically at the city level or state level, and we'll work to move back and forth. So let's start with Dan. Jason mentioned the board that governs you, but let's talk mission, structure, funding, the role that the South Dakota High School Activities Association plays for our state, that you and your team work each day to drive forward.
Sure. Well, our mission, before I start, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the Rotary for inviting me to come, and appreciate getting the chance to come and speak to you today. The mission of the Activities Association is quite simply to provide education-based athletics and fine arts activities for kids in South Dakota. And we aim to do that and teach character and selfless service and health and wellness throughout, and sportsmanship. That's been our mission since 1905, and that will continue to be our mission as we move forward. In terms of our structure, he mentioned the NFHS at the prior, or during the bios. The National Federation is based out of Indianapolis. They share a building with the NCAA, and they're the parent organization nationally. And then every state has their own activities association. Some states have different ones. For example, in Iowa, the Iowa Activities Association is just for boys sports. Then they have a girls association. They have an association for music. They have an association for speech events. Most states combine it all into one, and that's what we do as well. So nationally, you have the NFHS. At the state level, we have the South Dakota High School Activities Association. We have a staff of 9, which includes myself and 3 assistant directors. And over us is our 9-member elected board of directors. As mentioned, we serve 181 schools, around 40,000 athletes, 45,000 fine arts participants a year. Our board of directors is broken up into 4 divisions, each represent around 10 to 12,000 kids. And then we have at-large positions for East River and West River. We have a large school board of education member, a small school board of education member, and then a Native American representative on our board. So we have our board of directors, we have our staff, and then we have advisory committees for each of the activities that we do. And those all consist of coaches across the sizes of schools, administrators, officials, and then a Native American representative on each of those advisory committees as well. So rules proposals come from the NFHS down to us at the state level, and they go through our advisory committee, and then go through our athletic directors in the spring, and from the athletic directors back to our board of directors for 2 readings. So it's very much a representative process that we run, and we remind ourselves every day that we're a membership, and that we function at the behest of our schools, and we strive to do that every day. You know, in terms of us as well, you can kind of think of us as a state level NCAA in a way. We're the governing body. We control the playing rules and enforce those rules. We register officials. We control eligibility, things like that. So we are not a state entity. We don't fall under the state of South Dakota. I think we're considered a quasi-state entity in that we serve state entities, but ourselves are not one. Funding-wise, we have around a $3 million annual budget, and the vast majority of that revenue comes from gate receipts at our state events and then at our playoff events. Between 70 and 80% of our revenue comes from that. And then beyond that, we have corporate sponsors, and then we have officials registration as well. And schools pay a small amount to belong to us, generally $60 per sport that they offer, and then between $150 and $450 per school. So on the same respect, our expenditures are broken down pretty similar as well. Our expenditures are generally, for the most part, spent on our state events. And we receive around $180,000 from schools and dues. We return between $180,000 and $220,000 a year to schools in reimbursements at the end of the year, depending on how the year went financially. So our goal is to be self-sustaining, and and to serve our schools at the end of the day.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
And Casey, you are the Director of Activities for the Sioux Falls School District, 25,000 students. Talk to us about your role. You've been in it now 2 years, your responsibilities and what that's looked like. And then also touch on, for those, many in the audience are aware, but the succession planning that had to happen. You took over, I think your father had been in that role for quite some time. Maybe talk to us about what it's been moving into a position that he held for so long.
Yeah, it was a bold challenge because he was here for 25 years and did such a great job, and so I had some big shoes to fill in working into this role. But my job specifically, we provide opportunities for about 6,000 students in the Sioux Falls School District in athletics, and then there's a fine arts piece where we have a fine arts coordinator in charge of those activities. But I work very closely with our 4 high school activities principals and our 6 middle school athletic coordinators to administer the budget, manage the coaches, and we have about 170 coaches at the high school level and about 140 at the middle school level. And then we also make sure that we're in compliance with the state level that Dr. Swartos is talking about, and the national level that he's talking about, and the rules and the policies and the procedures that go into administering these athletic events that we provide for our students in the Sioux Falls School District.
Yeah, excellent. And this has been a unique year in a lot of ways, but one way that it has been unique, something that our district hasn't gone through for almost 30 years, is a redistricting process. Maybe talk to both the challenges and the opportunities that the Jefferson Cavaliers now, what does that look like from your seat?
Yeah, I'd probably say they're one and the same. The challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is, building that new staff, that new culture from the ground floor. And then also that's the same exciting part about building a new high school here in Sioux Falls and a new middle school is building a new staff and the opportunity that comes with it. But I think Chad and Dan are going to do an outstanding job of building that culture, building that staff. And I know they're doing a good job as we get closer into it, establishing and getting rid of the fears that are in the community. I think the more and more you get into it and you see the building, you see the drone footage of the new buildings that are coming and the opportunities that are going to be provided for our students in those buildings. I think a lot of that is really easing the tension that is in our community right now. And it's an exciting opportunity because we're going to have some of the finest facilities in the state of South Dakota.
Yeah. And that'll be for fall of 21. So we're 9 months or so out from the first new high school. So it's an exciting time, but you don't just get there overnight. And it feels like a long time ago, but that was just within the last 6 months that some of those final decisions were made in terms of districting. And we might have you talk a little bit more about that, because I can only imagine at your level or Dr. Stabum's level, not everyone agrees with where the boundary should be drawn. Let's jump into, we are going to talk about general activities. In a lot of ways at the state level, and we just are coming off the football championships, the volleyball championships. We're going to start here on the athletic side of things. Let's talk about football classifications. This has been a journey that been on for some time now. Dan, you share with us where we're at in this conversation. What steps have been taken? What still needs to happen before any decisions are made?
Yeah, well, we decided this year wasn't challenging enough. We wanted to bite off reclassifying football to go along with it. Now, in all actuality, this is my 4th year in the office, and I know that the conversations have been going on since prior to me getting here. Where we're at right now really started in earnest. Would have been November of 2019. The Football Advisory Committee passed a proposal, a 5-class proposal, which would have been 3 classes of 11 men, 2 classes of 9 men. It passed through the advisory committee, and from there it goes to our athletic directors for a vote in April. Going into that, we were very aware that it's when you're talking about something like this, it's incredibly likely that no proposal would get a majority vote of the athletic directors, to include staying and doing what we're continuing to do. So that's what came out of advisory. So we put that out to the athletic directors. It was around 50% for 11-man schools, quite a bit less than that for the 9-man schools. So from there, it goes to our board of directors. Our board of directors had a first reading on that in April of 2020, and during that meeting heard a number of concerns. So they sent it back to the football advisory and said, address a couple of these concerns and bring it back to us in May. The football advisory declined to make any changes and instead asked for permission to form a larger committee to look at it. And when our board got that back from advisory, they decided to vote on the original proposal. It was a 4-4 vote, which does not pass. So they then approved the formation of a larger subcommittee and directed them to come back to them in November with an updated proposal. So they did that, and when the committee met, what they ended up coming out of that committee with was a proposal that was authored by Kim Nelson and Steve Moore at Roosevelt High School, and it was an outside of the box way to look at it, where historically we've looked at ADMs to divide up football classifications, and this was looking at factors other than that. So it went to the board, and it was sort of a placing of schools into classifications based on competitiveness, and a lot of different factors. So when the board met to look at that, I think there was some concern, and there were I think there's support behind the concept of looking at something other than numbers, but I think there was some concern that there wasn't a process behind that. Competitiveness is kind of a difficult thing to measure, so I think there was some concern about that. What they did pass through for a first reading was staying with 7 classes of football and making an adjustment at that AAA, AA cut line. So that was a first reading that will come back to them in January for a second reading, and if they pass that, then that's what we would move forward with starting next year. The concerns I've heard from that since that meeting have continued to revolve around, there's nothing spelled out as to Aberdeen was sort of leapfrogged backwards over Brandon Valley and Harrisburg. And the numbers might bear that out so that that happens naturally here in December when we take the count. But for now, they kind of pulled Aberdeen out and put them down in AA with Watertown, and they pulled T up into AA. Looking at it globally, I think it makes some sense. It doesn't change AAA all that much. It makes AA much more competitive if you add Aberdeen and Watertown into there and you bring T in. Now AA is quite a bit more competitive, and then the rest of the classes don't change all that much. But I know, because I've seen a lot of the feedback that the board has gotten since then, I think the biggest concern is there's no process involved as to why that was. I think people would feel more comfortable with it if something was involved. And there are states that have success factors, and they have ways for schools to move up and down. We don't have that established right now. So I'm not sure where the board will go with that, but they'll have another chance at it in January. Through the process, we've kind of found that there's not a good way to split 11-man football into 3 classifications unless you're willing to have a 3 and 4 times enrollment multiplier from the bottom to the top, or you're willing to put 40 to 45 teams in Class 11B. And 9-man has been very vocal. They have very little interest in moving to 2 classes. So that's an issue unto itself. When we started 9-man football, when we added the 3rd class of 9-man, there were 85 teams playing 9-man football, and right now there's 66 due to consolidations and cooperatives. So if it gets down to 64 for 2 classification cycles in a row, that automatically goes back down to 2 classes. But it's a tough situation.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the smaller schools. I just think my hometown, Armour, we're with 4 or 5 communities, 45 miles from the furthest. Any consideration, and some states have gone to 6-man. There's been other options there. Is that plausible?
Well,
as you look at it today,
our board approved that 2 years ago. We had a request, and our board approved it, and we were essentially going to replace Class 9B with 6-man football. And when it came down to it, and when it came down for schools to commit to it, we only had 6 or 7 schools that were willing to commit to it. So the idea was kind of shelved for the time being. If we get to that 64 number and it's divided into 2 classes again, that might resurface with some of our smaller teams. We've got teams with 20 boys, 9 through 11, trying to play football, and it gets pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be something that comes up if that threshold is met and 9-man goes back to 2 classes. There might be some that pull out and go to the 6-man or want to do a 6-man model.
Yeah, it just seems like in some of our communities, it might have to be something that is looked at. Casey, you're on the other side of it. You're trying to provide opportunities for overcrowded schools, and that's why we talked about Jefferson earlier. Talk about Sioux Falls' take on this with the various categorization of the 7-class system.
Yeah, so with Jefferson coming in the mix, our enrollment sizes are going to be going down, and ultimately you look at it and go, big picture of it is why is there any difference between basketball and volleyball and soccer, and why do we need the difference in football? So when you're looking at it that way, you think, well, let's just do the top 16 ADMs and let's get them into 2 8-team divisions, a lot like the SEC does, and then you cross bracket for a couple, and then you seed 1 through 16 and play off. But I'm pretty realistic that that's probably not going to happen, and that ship has kind of sailed here in the state of South Dakota. But ultimately, for us in the Sioux Falls School District and that AAA class, I think the best scenario for us would be a 10-team AAA class, so that we have a nice round robin and then we can seed the 1 through 8 and play it off from there. So that would kind of be our best case scenario, but at the end of the day, Tony, our kids just want to play football. So
Right.
whatever we do, if that's 4, if that's 5 teams, if that's the 7 metro teams, we want to provide those opportunities, and we'll go look for games for our student athletes to compete in.
Yeah, for those viewing, how many are we at today? As it stands today, how many AAA schools on the football?
There's 10 right now.
10 today. So that's, you're saying you're in a good spot right now from AAA?
Yes.
Okay. Because I did want to talk about a little bit of a segue for that, and thanks, Casey, for sharing that. Early in the pandemic, there was conversation as some other states looked at different decisions for their sports seasons, talking about pushing those out. Did you see, or did we experience, I had heard families were considering, whether it was for sports or for other activities, coming across the border to ensure that their kids had an opportunity. Did that play out? Dan, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, we had a lot of requests. I had a family from the West Coast used Ancestry.com to find a relative in South Dakota and wanted to send their child to come live with that relative. We have some cross-border agreements with North Dakota and Minnesota, and a really very, very limited one with Iowa. That it pertains, essentially you have to be on a border district. It has to be 2 border districts for Minnesota for an open enrollment. They don't have to touch each other, but they both have to be on the border. For North Dakota, if it's a border North Dakota district, they can come to any district in South Dakota. In Iowa, it's based on if your house is physically closer to the district in South Dakota, then you can do it, but it's very, very limited there. For the rest of them, Nebraska, Wyoming, Montana, there is no agreement. So except for those limited circumstances, it would involve a physical move of the entire family. And we had a couple of those circumstances, but by and large, I got a lot of calls from California, Connecticut, a lot from Wisconsin, a lot from Minnesota, wanting to send their kids here, but in most cases, they weren't going to leave their home where they were at, and for the full family to come. Some were willing. Well, I'll just send dad and the son to come out here and rent a house, but there has to be a bona fide move for that to work. And we had a couple of those instances where the family actually moved. But by and large, there was inquiries, and there wasn't a huge influx of kids that came in.
Yeah. Did you see that more on the sports side or the arts and the other activities?
Sports.
Primarily sports?
Yeah.
Casey, from your chair, did you have some of those conversations with families?
Yeah, we've fielded the calls, mainly just kind of seeing what it takes and what's your close contact policy, all those type of things. But I have seen less than a handful that have actually done it. They've done a bona fide moved their entire family to the state of South Dakota. So it is happening, and especially it's picked up here in the last week with the decision by Minnesota to shut things down there for a little bit in their youth and high school sports. So the phone calls have started back up again.
Yeah. Do you want to, for our Rotarians here and those watching online, what did Minnesota, what was the decision that they made, and how could that impact our winter?
I think their decision, well, they had, I believe early in the fall, they weren't going to do football and volleyball, and then I think in late September they decided that they were going to do it. They got some football in. They weren't going to do a state championship, basically run through their sectionals, which are our regionals. They got almost to the end of that, last week, their governor re-shut things down. I think it's into January because of the situation with the pandemic.
So that's real recent.
Yeah.
So whether or not that persists,
Yes.
it may be a challenge to move
Yeah,
students
and we had
mid-year.
people that were trying to buy land on the Minnesota border, and we're going to park a camper on that land for the fall season and have their kid live there and then come across for sport.
Yeah. Just another reminder, people will do anything for their kids.
Yeah.
So that's Minnesota's stance. Talk to us about where we're at in South Dakota. We just had volleyball championships here recently, and we're looking at winter activities. Practice will be starting up. What's the board's take on where we go from here?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. We're very happy that we're able to get through our fall championships. We've got a virtual Oral and Terp championship that will be taking place here in the next couple of weeks, but we got all of our sports championships in, and we finished those up this last weekend, and that was due to a lot of work by our athletic directors and our administrators locally, by coaches, by kids, by parents. So we're very, very, very thankful for all the work that they put in, and just could not be happier for the kids and the coaches that they got to have their season. As we move forward here, I want to reiterate to everybody, we're going to have a winter season, okay? We're going to have a winter season. We're going to have our winter championships, barring something truly catastrophic happening. Those seasons are going to happen. Tomorrow, the board is going to meet and look at what can we do right now to help out the situation. Should we continue going on and just keep plugging along as scheduled? And you know, we've heard a lot that this is going to hit different schools and different communities at different times throughout the year. Let's just keep pushing forward, and schools will have to shut down as they shut down. There's also the thought out there that we've got Thanksgiving coming up. And we can build in a 2-week break after Thanksgiving and not impact the winter schedule all that much. It's a couple days for basketball, a week for boys basketball, a week for girls basketball, and a few weeks for gymnastics and wrestling. Let's take a 2-week break after Thanksgiving, allow kids to practice, but let's not have competitions till middle of December. That's what North Dakota is doing by order of their governor. And there's another thought that says, let's get through Thanksgiving and Christmas. Let's start the second week in January, and we can shift the back end of the season back, shift gymnastics and wrestling into March, shift the basketball tournaments into April. We can shift our spring events back a week or two, and still have those full seasons for everybody. But we get through what looks like a peak for us right now in the state. It looks like it's gone down a little bit over the last week, but to get through these holiday times, and then we still got a chance to have a full season for the kids. So I've seen rumors already on social media that we're going to shut down, we're going to pull the plug on basketball, we're going to pull the plug on this and that. If you see that, that's not the case. We're going to have our season. We're going to have our championships. We'll adjust as we need to. Right now, and tomorrow the board's going to meet to look at this. And I would expect that they'll look at, do we push on as scheduled and allow schools to shut down as needed? Do we give a couple weeks here after Thanksgiving to try to help out and see if we can get this peak down, but let them keep practicing, just not allow contests until then? Or do we get through Christmas and start fresh in January, and then shift things on the back end? They'll have that conversation tomorrow, and I'm not sure what they'll decide. We've had a lot of feedback on it, if you can imagine, and like anything else, it's very difficult to get a consensus when you're talking 180 different superintendents, 180 different school boards. It's very tough. So the board will talk about that tomorrow, but the main point is we're going to have our season. We're going to have our championships. The last thing that we want to do is cancel a second year of state basketball. That would be apocalyptic in our world, and for a number of reasons. So we're going to have our season. We're just looking at right now, what can we do to help out and what gives us the best chance to give these kids a full season and to get to play as many games as possible prior to the state tournament.
Yeah, great. Casey, on that, as the director of our largest district, I think going into the fall, a testament to the teachers, the administrators for getting us to this point. I think a lot of us, at least myself, thought we might have more challenges. It doesn't seem like schools are as much of the issue as it is the rest of us. Talk about some of the health considerations. What has the experience been this fall? And now looking ahead, I mean, we're all indoors, temperatures are cooling. Your expectations for navigating whatever decisions are made tomorrow. Your thoughts on kind of where we've been and where we go from here.
Yeah, when you set out and you look at this and you think it's going to be a daunting task in the middle of a pandemic, and then you talk to your healthcare providers and you talk with your state advisors, city and local, and our health services department in the Sioux Falls School District, and you look and all the measures that you got to put in place, you're like, is this even sustainable to provide this opportunity? But at the end of the day, our coaches and our kids just looked at us and said, hey, we'll do whatever it takes to make it happen. So you tell us what we need to do and we'll do it, because we want that opportunity to compete and to ultimately achieve our goal, which is our number one goal, is to stay in traditional learning in the Sioux Falls School District. And we want to do everything that we possibly can to ensure that that is happening here. So really proud of where we've been. I like you, was not very optimistic of how long this could look, but was willing to put in the work to make it happen. And just like Dan said, you're sitting at the state volleyball tournament in Brookings and just seeing all the smiles on the girls' faces, and the state football championship in Vermilion, and just seeing all the smiles that the kids are having and the opportunity to compete and all that type of stuff. It's just been very rewarding for all the hard work that our activities principals and athletic directors and everyone's put in the state of South Dakota. So
yeah, great. We wish you the best as you move into this next into the winter activities. I did have a question on one specific, and there's probably challenges in every activity, but I'm just thinking wrestling in a pandemic. Dan, do you want to take that one? What does that look like?
Well, wrestling's my sport. That's my background. So it pains me to say this, but wrestling is going to give me some ulcers this year, I think. And it's, at the end of the day, we put in place, like all of our sports, we put in place to control what we can control surrounding the activity. There's contact in wrestling. You can't get away from that. There's contact in basketball. With wrestling, at first we looked at, let's just have people do duels and triangulars, 2 or 3 teams getting together. But we've got a lot of some programs that have 4 or 5 kids on their roster for 14 weight classes. And nobody wants to pay officials and have a duel for 10 forfeits in a duel that might last 15 to 20 minutes. So, and those schools aren't going to get invited to do any of those things. So we had to provide an opportunity for individual tournaments. So what we did was we greatly limited that. They're essentially limited to full 8-man tournament brackets. We also very highly recommended that if you're going to have a tournament like that you either have no fans or you have very limited fans, so that when the wrestlers aren't wrestling, they're able to spread out among the facility to do that. The other things we put in involved, weigh-ins procedures, having teams weigh in as a team rather than calling all the 106-pounders up to weigh in shoulder to shoulder. Weighing in as teams, having medical personnel rather than officials do the skin checks prior to it. So a lot of it, like with all of our events, it's the situation surrounding the event itself and not the actual competition. So it's going to be difficult, but if we were to not do it, kids are still going to compete, and they would be going to club tournaments, regional club tournaments around the country, where there's hundreds and hundreds of kids gathered together, and then we have no control over how controlled that event is. So for us, and what we've heard from our schools, is the best place for our kids to be is competing in school-sponsored athletics. And if we don't sanction them, we don't sponsor them, they're going to do it anyway, and it's in situations where we can't control the environment surrounding it. So it's going to be very difficult to do wrestling this year, but I think we're going to be able to do it and see how it goes.
Yeah. Great. You mentioned control. There's certain decisions that need to be made at the state level, and you're going to have those conversations tomorrow. What decisions are made with your governing board, and then what gets pushed down to Casey and his peers throughout the state?
Yeah, particularly with COVID, we put a task force together this summer. It included Dr. Jeremy Cowles from Sanford, Dr. Earl Valentine from Sanford, Trey Godney is an athletic trainer, Paul Richter is an athletic trainer from out in Rapid City, members of the Department of Health, members of the Department of Ed, and then 20 different administrators of all sizes, from Casey at Sioux Falls to Kelly Mesmer at Harding County. So we wanted to get all those different viewpoints in there, and we went through, and essentially they gave recommendations to our board on rules changes, procedures for screening kids every day, and protocol for what happens when you get a confirmed case on the team. So we put all that together. We came up with some alterations to the playoffs and how we do that. That's what we put out. That's what our board did. Now, there's things that we don't have the authority to control in our Constitution or our bylaws, like mask use during the regular season or attendance during the regular season. So we put a sample sort of tiered system out there that says, schools, you can use this based on 7 and 14-day trends of active cases or hospitalizations in your area, and develop something that works the best for you. So while it would have been nice for us to come out and put something, we've got 181 schools, and one of them would have challenged us on it. And when we got challenged, we would have nothing to fall back on to say, here's where we have the authority to tell you what you can allow in your gymnasium during regular season contests. So we really recommended schools do that and have a tiered system. For the most part, they did that, and they did a pretty good job of looking at where they were at and making decisions on what's best for them locally.
Yeah. Thank you. And Casey, this may have been made easier by the city council's vote last week, but what we're wearing right now has been pretty divisive. Talk to us about what the experience was this fall. I mean, a lot of the activities were outside during the fall, at least football was. And then what the expectations are, what that experience will look like. Numbers of parents, can grandparents go, the number of students that'll be allowed. You talk to us about that?
Yeah, when we set out in the Sioux Falls School District, we really looked at what kind of guidance we were getting from the CDC and our medical providers. And when this whole thing started, the first thing you started hearing the CDC say is 150 max, and 50. So we adopted the tiered system and really and gave it so that if this thing does get ramped up and it does go down, we have opportunities to go to this and provide every opportunity that we can for our kids to compete. And one of those levels was no fans. Another one of those levels was limited fans, and then full attendance and all that type of thing. And then obviously if it's shut down. So we had a 4-tier system. The mask was a big issue at the start, but I'm really proud of our leadership in the Sioux Falls School District. Our school board and our executive leadership in the Sioux Falls came out with expected, and we took it in the athletic world that we're going to model the behavior that we want to see, and all of our coaches started wearing them, and our teachers started wearing them, and our kids have been phenomenal. It hasn't been a problem. I was really worried about our first volleyball game and our first football game, and our kids and students and our teachers have really responded, and it really hasn't been an issue. Even at our outdoor events, they were wearing them. Our coaches have been wearing them on the sideline, and we really did a lot of measures to spread people out, put caution tape on bleachers and all that type of stuff to make a safe environment for our kids to compete in. So that was kind of the fall, and it went really well here in the Sioux Falls School District. Obviously, we're the largest school district in the state of South Dakota, and we're still in a traditional learning environment, and that was our number one goal in athletics, is we want to stay in school. It doesn't matter if we have activities, we want to stay in school, and the activities will be a benefit of us following those procedures. So as into winter, obviously, like you said, we're going all indoors. And our basketball games are well attended. Our wrestling events are well attended, and we have gymnastics in there as well. So based on the capacity size of our facilities, we'll probably have in the athletic world a 2 ticket per rostered athlete in our facilities, because we have a good student body. What we decided this is about the students, and it's a student-centered activity. So we're not going to limit the student body that comes into our facilities and give them the space that they need to properly cheer on, because that's what it's about too. We want students involved in basketball. We want students involved in gymnastics, but it's also being involved in our community, and that's coming and supporting each other and being at the games and being around each other in this time. We feel like that's important too. So we don't want to take that opportunity away from our students. So that's kind of why we chose to do that. So the one that gets hurt a little bit in that is the adults, but our adults have been awesome. And Dr. Swartos and I were talking about that a little bit. The volleyball was not an issue. You maybe had 1 or 2 masks in the Sioux Falls School District in our gyms, where people weren't wearing masks in our gyms, but they were doing it and doing it well. And then when the event is over, that's something that you build and grow, is that community and sticking around each other. But we cleared the facilities right away, and people have been really doing an outstanding job for us in the Sioux Falls School District. So proud of where we're at.
That's great to hear. That's the level you're at right now. So it'll be essentially all student body plus 2 tickets per.
Yeah, so myself and Dr. Perkins are going to go to the school board with a recommendation tonight, actually.
Okay.
That'll be tonight at the school board meeting, but it'll be based on capacity of our facility. So fine arts and athletics may look a little bit different. If we have a larger theater or venue of that nature, it may be 4. But for our basketball facilities, our wrestling facilities, and the amount of people that come to those type of events, it's probably going to be 2 per rostered athlete. And then we allow our student athletes in, we allow the staff members to come into our events as well. So that's kind of what it will more than likely look like in the Sioux Falls School District this winter.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. One other topic that's come up in the past, I believe we tested it a number of years ago with volleyball, is the concept of championship night. So probably for basketball, volleyball, where you'd have your various classes lined up in one venue in one community and play back to back. Talk to us, Dan, about that. Any appetite for that versus where we're at today is rotating communities and ensuring that other communities have an opportunity to host.
Yeah, I've heard, I know Stu pushes that a lot. There's a lot of people that push that, and I understand that idea. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. The devil's in the details. And to do that, you either have a week-long state tournament to get all the games in if we're going to do them all at the Premier Center, or you're using satellite sites for those games leading up to the championships, and you're using satellite sites for the 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th. And, particularly in Class B, when you have teams that don't make it very often, I think of a Falkton last year. It's the first time they'd ever qualified for state basketball in either gender, and the tournaments got canceled. Playing those games at the state tournament means a lot, whether they're playing for 7th and 8th or whether they're playing for 1st and 2nd. So to do it, we'd have to find a system where it doesn't feel like we're shifting those games off to the side, and truly making it the best experience possible for the kids in the school. That's what it's about at the end of the day, and it would be a great thing for the fans. But we need to do what our schools and our kids want and what's best for them, and the Bees have quite a tradition of playing up in Aberdeen, and so our schools want to have to do it as well, and we haven't had that push from our school, so it's not something it's something we've looked at and we've heard quite a bit. It's not something that we've seen come through our basketball advisory committee or anything like that. I think it'd be fantastic for the fans. I think it could be fantastic for the kids. The logistics of it would be tough in making sure that you're keeping the integrity of the entire tournament and not throwing 3/4 of the tournament away for a really great final night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that perspective. And with what you have going on, this is probably not the year to be looking for other things to take on. Let's see if there, Angie, any questions online or anyone here have questions? I believe we have a mic right here set up. Jeff, you want to?
Dan, Casey, thank you guys for this on. Good. All right.
Can you switch it on quick?
Thank you guys for being here. So I just moved my family here from out of state, and outside of the parents moving their kids who are all destined for the NFL, right? My daughter's not going to play in the U.S. Open or Wimbledon, but having a tennis season has helped her make friends, and every Sunday night she has her tennis lessons now with other girls that she met from Washington. So thank you guys for piecing that all together. Appreciate it as a parent, because I do see our school system as part of the Chamber of Commerce in terms of what we do and attract people and retain talent. But my question specifically is, what relationship do we have with athletics and activities with the NCAA or our college representatives for kids transitioning their activities or athletics on any level into their college careers?
Yeah, the NFHS works with the NCAA quite a bit, and right now there's quite a bit concerned with the name, image, and likeness that's going through the NCAA, that would translate down to the high school ranks. So the NFHS works with the NCAA quite closely on that. And then we have a primer, basically a protect your eligibility primer for kids, just to make sure that they know, you need to do these things so that you don't compromise your eligibility in college. We factor that in all of our seasons. Last year we were talking about potentially trying to do the state basketball in June. We visited with Dave Herbster, and we visited with some people at the NCAA to make sure that wouldn't violate anything that the NCAA does. So aside from that, our primary goal is to get kids involved and to tie them into their high schools and to prepare them for that next step. But we don't work directly with kids in terms of scholarships with the NCAA or anything like that.
Kadir?
I don't need microphone. Thank you. My question is, my 5 kids graduated in Washington High School, and they was very involved with the football and basketball and track and field. But my oldest one have exposure to outside the state. We used to go to Sioux City. We used to go to some high school in Minnesota area. So our athlete in Sioux Falls was have more exposure outside the state. What made the decision in Sioux Falls School District to stop that communication with the outside state activity, which give more exposure to our kids? My younger kids never have that opportunity to play outside school, which was very comparative between Sioux City and Sioux Falls and some high school in Minnesota.
Yeah, so in the Sioux Falls School District, a lot of that was dictated by some of the state scheduling that we had. When we went to a round of 16, which is a good for the betterment of the state of South Dakota, we have a schedule, and it benefits our teams by playing all of the teams in the state. It helps our seeding points and all those type of things so that we're in position when it comes to the state tournament time and all that type of stuff. So a little bit of it was that. In football in my first year, and basketball for that matter, the round of 16 wasn't in place. So I did try. We drove up and we met with the Metro Conference ADs up in the Twin Cities, the Eden Prairie's, Minnetonka's, the Wayzatas, and we did try that relationship. Minnetonka was actually playing here. They had the point guard that was committed to Connecticut, and she's playing in Roosevelt High School's gymnasium against our girls. But there's just really no interest for those type of schools to come down here and have that type of exposure. Now, what I will say is when Fred Tibbetts was here, we had to go to Oregon to find that game. But we're very fortunate in the state of South Dakota, and more specifically the city of Sioux Falls, with the facilities that we have, the Premier Center, and now the Pentagon. People are starting to come to us. We have the Mike Miller Classic. I mean, we have Findlay Prep. We have Joel Embiid playing in our facilities here in Sioux Falls, and that exposure for our type of kids. So we, unlike Fred, where he had to travel all the way across the country, those type of teams are coming to South Dakota right now, and that exposure is still available and here for our students, and our students are exceeding in all of that type of stuff. And with recruiting nowadays, a lot of the sentiment was when I was playing, because I was the same age as Amanj and all those your kids. We had to go get that exposure. Recruiting wasn't really finding us, but it's finding us now. I mean, we have Sydney, who was playing on Saturday night, going to Louisville as a two-sport athlete. We have Tyler Feldkamp at Roosevelt High School. We got Taylor Christian. We got all kinds of kids finding that exposure. Randolph Kapai at Roosevelt. So the dynamic has changed over those years, and a lot of things have changed in the city of Sioux Falls, but a testament to the Sports Authority and all those type of places for giving us the facilities that we need here, and people are coming to find us here.
Yeah, it's great to see that partnership, and Dan, you brought it up earlier, it's all about the kids. How do we put them in the best position to have the greatest experience that they can have?
From a state level, I think some of the conflicts have been that our classification cycle is off from our neighboring states' classification cycles. We do 2-year cycles, they do 2-year cycles, but they're off. We're doing a 1-year cycle this year so we can get back on track with where the other states are. That might make some scheduling a little bit easier, particularly in football if we wanted to do that. But some other states have put in ordinances where they're not allowed to play out. Like I think Iowa is pretty strict on who they can play from out of state in football. So there's a little bit of that, but a lot of it is our decisions made locally. And you know, I would agree with what Casey has said. The facilities that we're bringing in, whether it's the new Monument Center out in Rapid, or it's the Pentagon, or the Premier Center, or you know, the things that we have going on here in the state are really good, and they'll continue to draw teams in from around the country.
Excellent. Any other questions? I have one more, Casey, that I had intended to ask you, and it's not a secret. There's growing diversity in the Sioux Falls School District. I believe we're at about 40% of the students would be considered non-white. The next 10 years, the trend will tell you that we're going to be a minority majority. What either challenges or opportunities does that present when you look at activities and ensuring kids, regardless of their background, have an opportunity?
Yeah, so ultimately what you want to do, we all know the benefits of what activities provide to kids. I mean, it improves their grades, it improves their attendance in schools, it gives them the essential life skills that are needed to be a productive community member when they're done. So the challenge for us will always be, how do we get them involved and engage in our activities and promote that lifetime fitness for them, and removing those barriers, whatever that may be. Is it transportation? Is it finances and things of that nature? So we really want to look at that and make sure that we're knocking down those barriers and we're building those relationships to get all those kids involved in no matter what opportunity that they want.
Yeah, we'll be at Rotary and as a community cheering you on as you look at those. And those are, I'll say, opportunities for all of us, whether it's workforce, whether it's activities today. Just we know that that's an opportunity for us as a community, and we need to work together to ensure that we have success there. So with that, I'm going to ask President Jason Herbold to come back up. I want to say thank you, Dan. Thank you, Casey, for joining us, and thank you for what you've done, not only this year, but even leading up to this year. It's been quite a 2020, and we're grateful to have you two in the chair that you're in leading us forward. So thank you.
Yeah, I think it was said, it is all about the kids. So Dan and Casey, thank you for your leadership and pushing through for the kids. Thank you. Join us next week, fellow Rotarians and guests, for our program and our meeting. We will be with Jeff Eckhoff and Mark Cotter with the city of Sioux Falls to talk about all the exciting things that are going on with development and infrastructure. So please join us next week. Rotary is adjourned. Thank you.